Hello and welcome back to the 12th lesson of the Year 2 Theory and Methods section of this online series. For this section, you need to be familiar with the different sociological theories and perspectives and how they attempt to explain the world in which we live. Press pause as you add this as your title for this section, either on paper or a computer. As a subheading, we're going to be looking at the difference between structure and action before focusing on the action theories in more detail. So for this particular video, the subheading will be the difference between structure and action. Before looking at action theory in its own and as a theory in its own right, I'm going to do a brief recap on the main elements of the various sociological theories and some of the key terms to be looking out for. So firstly, for example, remember a sociological theory is one that's attempting to explain the social world in which we live. Different theories have different ways of doing this. Throughout the online series on theory, I've said that this diagram is going to be one that's really useful for you, and you should commit it to memory to be able to recall in the exam, because it places each of the classic sociological theories into a framework that shows both their similarities and differences. We started with this idea that traditional sociological theories can be divided into structuralist or non-structuralist, and then we looked at the main structuralist theories in much more detail. So you should be familiar with the main ideas of functionalism, Marxism, feminism, and their varieties. We'll do a brief recap on the differences between structure and action, and then we'll look at the other side of the debate, the non-structuralist theories, or action theories as they're known. So remember, some theories see the individual as a product of society. This idea that the individual is caught in the spider's web was the example that we used. Alternatively, we could look at the action approach, which sees the individual as more like the spider and creating the web. And by web, I really mean society. If you need to press pause to write down any of these definitions, then please do so. But you should already have these anyway. Remember, you must be able to recall definitions of these terms to be able to make sense of sociological theory and ultimately to write better exam answers. So we'll start with the definition of structuralism. You must be able to understand what this means and define it. Note the contrast here. Structuralism is contrasted with social action theories. And as we saw previously, and this will come into more focus when we look at the link between theory and methods, a structuralist approach will be macro, in so much as it takes a whole world view, looking at the big picture. Therefore, as we said previously, we can link this to the use of big methods, such as official statistics that consider the whole population, or a questionnaire as part of a large-scale research project. Quickly to recap, an action approach, on the other hand, will be micro, focusing in detail on the small-scale interactions that shape social life. Hence, a social action theorist, sometimes referred to as SAT, will prefer methods such as an unstructured interview or a participant observation. These methods may not be as representative of wider populations, but a social action theorist would say they generate more valid detail. Recap the concept of voluntarism linked to social action theory. Contrast this with determinism linked with structuralism. The structures of society determine your outcomes. And again, a term we've looked at already, but one we'll be coming back to a lot in theory and methods. Therefore, make sure you're able to define the definition of social facts. And finally, social construction, another term that you're already familiar with. Make sure that you can define each of these 9 terms as a very minimum. Press pause now while you test yourself. Just say them out loud. What do these terms mean? Recall. When looking at traditional sociological theories, the first distinction we make is to say whether they adopt what is known as either a structuralist or what is broadly described as a non-structuralist approach. That is what these 2 pictures are supposed to represent. From our list of 9 terms, we can safely say that they're both a theory, and from the remaining 8, the 4 linked to the structuralist approaches are structuralism, obviously you're probably saying, macro, determinism, and social facts. And to link to action approaches, again, action, obvious you might say, micro, voluntarism, and social construction. Therefore, having done functionalism, Marxism, and feminism as structuralist theories, we can say that they're all similar in as much as they are all looking at society as a whole. In contrast with the action theories that we'll be looking at in more detail, they adopt a different micro approach to studying and understanding society. These are the fundamental points to note. Firstly, these theories are all sociological and they're all trying to explain society from either side here. They're looking to explain how society works, and you need to know the basic principles of each, the key studies, the concepts, the applications, examples, and criticisms. The main differences can be seen in the red boxes, and the statements are attempting to describe the pictures. As I've said, having established these principles, which you really need to know, we can then go on to look at action theories in much more detail, and that is the next step.